Okay, Shalom Aleichem everybody. It's great to be able to speak to you in this forum. I wanted to share with you an idea pertaining to Chag HaPesach, really pertaining to the very unique Hallel that we say at the Hallel of Seder every single year. And it is a very, very unique type of Hallel. It's a very anomalous kind of Hallel. Perhaps the most pressing question that many ask when it comes to this Hallel, the Ran asks in Maseches Pesachim, in the last parak, why is there no bracha at the Hallel that we say at the Hallel of Seder? After all, when it comes to Hallel in general, we have a bracha of Likro es Hallel, al Kriyas Hallel. Why is there no such bracha when it comes to the Hallel of the Hallel of Seder? That's question number one. A second question that is asked by the Taz. The Taz is found in Siman Tuf, Chaf, Beis, Sifkat, and Dalid. Is how come, normally speaking, we have a minute of our practices to say Hallel standing up. When it comes to the Hallel of the Hallel HaSeder, we recite it sitting down. Why exactly is that the case? That's an anomalous, a very unusual way of recitation of Hallel. Similar questions asked by the Chasam Sofer. This is found in his Tshuvas Orach Chaim Siman Nun Aleph, where the Chasam Sofer is bothered. When it comes to Hallel, the Gemara Megillah tells us that Hallel is typically recited during the daytime. Mimizrach HaShemesh, during the time that the Shemesh is shining, that's when we go ahead and say Hallel. Why do we say Hallel at night? Night is not the time that we're supposed to say Hallel. So question number three is, why do we specifically say Hallel at night on this particular night? Why not, as the normal rule is, to say Hallel during the daytime? Question number four is a Mishnah in Maseches Megillah tells us, lists off, the Mishnah is found in Megillah Daf Chaf Mem Beis, the mitzvos that are Laila mitzvos, nighttime mitzvos, Sfiras HaOmer, a nighttime mitzvos. We have certain mitzvos, and the Mishnah delineates the nighttime mitzvos. Hallel at the Hallel HaSeder is not delineated as one of those nighttime mitzvos. Why is it omitted from that list? That's question number four. So what exactly is going on with this Hallel? And perhaps the most profound question, the strangest aspect of the Hallel at the Hallel HaSeder is the fact that we have a bifurcated Hallel. We divide the Hallel in two. We say the first two paragraphs of Hallel before Shulchan Aruch, before the meal. Then we have the meal, and then we say the balance of Hallel when the meal's over. It's very, very unusual. Why is that not called a hefsek? Why is that not an interruption in the recitation of Hallel? So what emerges is that the Hallel that we say at the Hallel HaSeder is a very, very unusual Hallel. It looks like Hallel. It smells like Hallel. The paragraphs that we say are the paragraphs of Hallel. But it's very, very different than our traditional Hallel. There's no bracha. It is said at night, not during the daytime. It is said seated, not standing. It is said with this separation in the middle, with a hefsek in the middle. I think we have one more question as well. Unusual Hallel. Very, very different kind of Hallel. Perhaps one last question we'll ask. This is based on the Gemara in Maseches Sukkot Daf Lamed Ches. The Gemara there tells us, the Mishnah tells us, the Gemara tells us that women are pturos in the mitzvah of Hallel. And then the Mishnah and the Gemara have one exception to that rule. When it comes to the Hallel of Leil Pesach, yep, there women do say that Hallel. Women are chayavos, not Hallel. After all, they're chayavos nar bakosos, afin hayvos anes. So therefore, they're chayavos in the Hallel of the Hallel HaSeder as well. So it's a very, very strange Hallel. A number of different approaches are given, but perhaps we can suggest that based on the lashon of the Rambam, the lashon of the Sefer HaChinuch, perhaps the Hallel that we say at the Hallel HaSeder is not Hallel whatsoever. It looks like Hallel. It has the formula of Hallel, but it's not your classic mitzvah mikra of Kriyas Hallel, and that's why there's no bracha. That's why it can be said at night. That's why it is said sitting down, because while it looks like Hallel, it's not really Hallel. You look at the Sefer HaChinuch in Mitzvah Chaf Aleph, where he describes the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. So the lashon of the Sefer HaChinuch is mitzvah lesaper be'inyan Yetzias Mitzrayim belel chamisha asar banisan. There's a mitzvah to tell the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim on the night of the Seder. And then the Minchas Chinuch adds ula halel ula shabeach Hashem Yizbarach al kol hanisim she'asa lanu sham. And then to recite Hallel v'tishbachos, Shira to Hashem, for all of the nisim that He did for us at that night at Yetzias Mitzrayim. So incorporated within the midst of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim is, number one, telling the story, reliving the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim. But with that, it's not sufficient just to tell the story. One must also go ahead and be Mahallel and Mishabech Hashem for that which he did for us. So therefore, perhaps one could suggest, again, this is the language of the Rambam as well. You'll take a look in the Sefer HaMitzvos, Mitzvahs Aseh Kuf Nun Zayin, where the Rambam echoes the same concept, where he tells us that this is not an ordinary Hallel. This is really a mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and within that mitzvah, there's an aspect of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim that demands Hallel v'hodah, thanking Hashem, not merely telling a story, but doing something with that story, expressing that sense of Hakaras Hatov, Shiros v'Tishbachos. And if that's the case, we understand very well all of the answers to our questions. First of all, why is there no bracha of Kriyas Hallel, al mitzvahs Kriyas Hallel? The answer is because this is not a mitzvah of Kriyas Hallel. This is a mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why do we go ahead and say it sitting down and not standing up? The answer is because that's how we do Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. Why at night, when normally Hallel is recited in the day? Yeah, because this is not a mitzvah of Hallel, it's a mitzvah of Sipur. The time for Sipur is the night of Pesach. Why are women chayavos? Because this is not your traditional Hallel. This is a Hallel of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and Nashim are chayavos in the mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim. So that's really the ultimate yesod. Yet we find this break in the action. This break, we say the first two paragraphs, then Shulchan Aruch, then the completion of Hallel. What is that all about? What's the message over there? So I think it's the same exact idea. Is that when you think about our experience at the Hallel of Seder, and you think about what the Seder is all about, and you think about the Suda of the Seder. So the Suda of the Seder, really, we do is really not the real thing. The real thing was the Korban Pesach. What we do is a facsimile of the Korban Pesach. And when you think about what the Korban Pesach is, the Korban Pesach is a Korban, a Su'uda, and the context of the Suda, I would suggest, is what I'll call a unique and perhaps even a paradigmatic Korban Toda. It's a Korban where we give thank you to Hashem for that which He did for us. And it's very, very striking. There's a famous Vilna Gaon on the Haggadah. The Gra points out, Arba tzrichim lahodos. 4 people have to give hodah, have to give thank you, shira, to Hashem for a certain salvation. That's what we say, Birchas HaGomel. 4 different types of people have to say Birchas HaGomel. Someone who was taken out of a Beis HaSohar, a jail, someone who crossed the desert, someone who crossed the sea, and someone who's cured from a serious illness. Those are the Arba shetzrichim lahodos. Says the Vilna Gaon that Bnei Yisrael experienced all of those salvations in the process of Yetzias Mitzrayim. We crossed the sea, we crossed the desert, we got out of a Beis HaSurim, out of jail, and we were cured from illnesses. Arba tzrichim lahodos, there was a demand for a Korban Toda, for a Birchas HaGomel, and that's exactly what the Korban Pesach was. Perhaps the Arba Lashonos of Geula are also reflected in these Arba tzrichim lahodos. So your Korban Pesach is fundamentally a Korban Toda. So let's take one last minute taking a look at a very fundamental and beautiful idea when it comes to Korban Toda. So we know that there's a famous Netziv in Parshas Tzav, and the Netziv tells us the Korban Toda was a very, very dramatic Korban, huge Korban. It was a big animal accompanied by 40 loaves of pas, of bread, 30 of matzah, 10 of chametz, a very, very big Korban. And it had a unique halacha of nosar. You couldn't leave any of that over. You had to bring the Korban and eat it by the next morning. Big Korban, plenty of bread, and you have to eat it by the next morning. How are you going to pull that off? So the Netziv says that the way you're going to pull that off is by eating together with a lot of people. When you bring that Korban, you're going to have to invite your family and your friends to partake of it with you. Otherwise, you're going to have left over to the next morning. You're going to violate Nisr of Nosar. So you have to bring a lot of people. Why is the Korban built in such a way that it has to be done in public with a lot of people involved? The answer is because part of the bringing of the Korban is not just me expressing my sense of Hakaras Hatov, but a Sipur Hanes, telling over the story, what happened, trying to go ahead and be Mefarsem what Hashem did for us. And therefore, not enough for me locally, privately, to just bring my little Korban, but I'm going to have to invite my friends and family, and I'm going to tell over the story. That's what a Korban Toda is. It's a big Korban that has to be eaten in a very, very short period of time, built that way, Kedei L'Saper Es Hanes. That's exactly what the Korban Pesach is as well. The Korban Pesach is a relatively large Korban that we eat bechabura, that we eat in groups, because the mission of the Korban Pesach is not just to have a nice dessert of basar or ravididya type of barbecue. The mitzvah of Korban Pesach is to have the Suda and to go ahead and then be Mesaper the Nes on the Korban. If you take a look, the Netziv makes this point as well. When we go ahead and say Hallel, listen to this, it's very beautiful. When we say Hallel, we say Lecha Ezbach Zevach Toda. We will bring to Hashem a Zevach Toda, a Korban Toda, Uveshem Hashem Ekra, and we'll call out to Hashem. It's not just to bring the Korban, but it's also to speak out. Uveshem Hashem Ekra, what Hashem did for us. Why are we bringing this Korban? Nedarai LaHashem Hashalem, I have a chova, a neder, to bring this Korban. Negdana L'chol Amo, and it has to be done in the presence of all of Bnei Yisrael, to be Mesaper the Nes. Where do I bring it? Bechatzos Beis Hashem. I bring it in the Chatzer of the Beis HaMikdash. That's where the Korban is brought. Besochechi Yerushalayim. But the message of the Korban transmits and is permeated throughout all of Yerushalayim. That's exactly this idea of the Netziv, and that's exactly what the Korban Pesach is. That's exactly what the Hallel of Seder is all about. It's a mitzvah not of Hallel, but a mitzvah of Sipur Hanes. So it's not a stira, not a contradiction, not a hefsek to have the first two paragraphs of Hallel, the Suda, and then finish up Hallel, because the Suda is all part of the Hallel experience, the Korban Pesach experience, to go ahead and have the Suda, and through that Korban, through that beautiful paradigmatic Korban Toda, use that opportunity to sing praises to Hashem. So the mitzvah, the essence, the idea is that when it comes to the mitzvah of Hallel that we say the Hallel of Seder, we'll call it the mitzvah of Hallel. It's a misnomer. It's not Hallel. It's a mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, which incorporates the idea of Hallel v'Hodah, to give thanks for the goodness that Hashem did for us then, and to look at ourselves as if we ourselves left Mitzrayim right now, and also to have that spontaneous recitation of Shira LaHashem for all the good that He does for us.